Okay, hey, everybody. So, did you work on the Fiesta stage last year,
Not last year.
the year before?
Yes, the year before.
Oh, okay. I thought you had.
I did last year.
Oh, you did last year. So do either of you guys want to do it this year?
I'm gonna be in.
That's right, you're leaving.
When is it?
I don't know, I can get the dates to you. But, so, every year we put up well, we used to do the Mission and the Sunken Garden dance stage for the Fiesta dances. Now I just do the Sunken Garden. And I think this is gonna be my last time, but, I don't know, if Daniel worked with me and he might be away, so we're kind of scrapping. So if anybody either has done it and wants to do it or wants to try it, it's a 2-day setup. You unload from a Marburg trailer. And then set it up the next day, and then it's a 1-day takedown. So it's 3 days it's late, right? Fiesta is usually in August, I think. So I can bring the dates. I'll bring the dates next week. I forgot them today. But it's a lot of fun. You get paid, I don't know what you get paid. I think it's like 25 an hour, maybe, something like that. And it's kind of fun. And it's getting involved in the community, and it's pretty cool. So I'll tell you more about it, but I just realized I needed to get working on it because, we only have 2 more classes. So tonight we're gonna look at this homework assignment, to close out those units, and then we're gonna do a final prep. So it's good that you all came. And then if we have time, there's one other topic I'm gonna try to cover. And then next week's the final. And then the week after is the review of the final and last class. So it's really coming to a screeching halt here. As far as I know, the fall classes aren't listed yet, right? They are?
Mhm.
Is there green building?
That's the only one that's missing. There's beginning construction, beginning carpentry, intermediate carpentry, and roofing. Just the framing class.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's gonna be blueprint reading and the math class.
And the blueprints in the summer.
Oh, the blueprint, the math class was gonna be in the summer, so that's gonna be it. So you know what they do, what the scheduling office does, they take your last year's schedule and they automatically post it. And then the teachers are supposed to you look at it and change it right away. They used to have us just do it and we turn in the thing, which is better because then we didn't have to go through it. So it gets confusing because we might change as far as I know, we're adding blueprint reading because it's about time. A lot of you need it to complete your things. Some of you it's the last class, but last time I talked to Timmy, it was going to be offered in fall, so we'll see. I think that's going to be my last class here. Everybody goes, yay. After 17 years of okay. So let's look at that homework assignment. So who doesn't have it or is sharing one? Wait. I think I have two. No. You did it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I already emailed the PDF to you.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Right.
So
Okay.
I can print it and-
You guys saw it, sure. I didn't want to make a whole bunch of copies because it costs money. But a lot of people didn't do this. Okay, so the first one was the relationship between U factor and R value. And that was, U equals one over R, or R equals one over U, right? The low E, a lot of you got either confused or didn't get it right, but there were 4 sides, starting 1 on the outside, 2 on the inside of the outside, and then 3 and 4. And you only put them on 2 and 3, period, because if they're on the outside, they'll get hurt by the outside environment, or inside they'll get children scratching on them. So, and the first one was 3. Number 2 was 3. It's the third side because it's closer to the house. You can kind of think of it that way. It's closer to the house, so it doesn't let the heat. If it was on the inside and the heat got into that first inside pane, then it would get into that space that's there. And if there was any kind of convection, the heat would go up and it'd go out faster. So you want it as close to the house as you get it. So that was 3. And then the other one's to keep the heat from the outside coming in. So that would be the side closest to the outside, which would be the second side. Okay, I'm going to scratch number 4 because people said that they people said they found out they do sell single pane. They don't allow you to use it in California. So I had using it in the house in mind when I did it, but if you can get it for any reason, like greenhouses take single pane, and I guess they still sell them as a specialty item. So I'm going to just take that number 4 off. So who got number 4 wrong? Okay,
So,
on the single pane. Anybody else?
Mine wasn't graded, but I simply do, which I think is the wrong answer.
Well, I'll
Yeah,
Okay.
I said that we do as well.
yeah, I'll keep that in mind. When I see yours. Anybody else? Yeah, oh yeah, I gotta do that. Okay. What are low E coatings made of? Now they had in one of those handouts, they had everybody put the paragraph that said. But if you just put, metal, flake metal coating, something like that, that would be enough. 6, 3 functions of a window. So of course we think of it as letting sunlight in, because that's what it does. And we think of it as ventilating. That's if it's open, if it's operable. If it's not, doesn't even do ventilating, but most windows are open. And then the view. I mean, some of us don't have views, so we don't always think about that as a reason. R value is roughly 1.9 or 1 on a single pane and roughly 2 on a double pane. The label you all got right. And it's got the characteristics of the window, which legally have to be above or below certain standards. And it also tells that the window was passed, a national standardized test of decency. You can make your own windows, right? Anybody here made their own windows? There's nothing in the laws because you can't do that. And I think you have to explain how you did it and how it was sealed and stuff to the inspector to make sure it's equivalent to a manufactured window that meets those standards. Interesting, huh? Strategies to improve windows. They're still using gas fillings and of course low E coatings and then multiple panes. Solar home question. This one cracked me up. I'll get to one of the answers here. So some people got 11 wrong. It's true, but it is that arrangement. And the arrangement is, you want most of your rooms higher than the sunroom, so the heat and gravity feed, or if you're using fans, but there's always an optimal arrangement of rooms. a lot of times, houses are built on a long axis facing south, so they get all the sun, it doesn't have to go too deep. Materials used, water, rocks, concrete, wallboard, and then, what was that other, the salt? What was the name of it? Anybody?
Labyrinth salt?
What?
Labyrinth or labels, labyrinth.
Yeah. Yeah, where'd you guys get that answer?
Look at it.
Is that on the internet?
Yeah.
Because remember that woman I told you about that did the early solar home in MIT? That's what she used. That was her idea. She was a chemist and she thought she used that. You know, until I saw this show on her, I never heard of that salt before. But, have you ever seen those solar collections that are in a circle in the desert? There was one near Barstow.
Yeah.
And then they've got a big tower and a thing. Some of those use salt, because salt, when it is heated like that, it turns into a liquid.
Mhm.
And so they can use it. That's probably that same salt, I would imagine. They never usually talk about that name, but it has a change of phase value that works with solar heating. And then when they go from glass, water containers or something that holds heat, usually to a rock storage in the basement, usually fans are what fan it down. That's a pretty standard arrangement. Clear story, obviously it's up high, it lets the sun go further into the house. Number 14, so that's. So here, so you know, when you get these wrong, this is a perfect chance to learn about stuff, right? Because it gets more complicated than it should. And so the whole thing about active and passive is kind of a weird thing, but they still use those terms and they're not. You know, active and passive means you don't do anything, you don't act, and active means you're doing something and behavior is that way. So how would it apply to, you know, mechanical systems in a house? Well, it's merely a matter of electricity. If it uses electricity, it's automatically active. If it doesn't use electricity, it's passive. So that's the translation of those terms into building. Passive solar heating uses no electricity or fans to heat the house, so that was true. And then the oppositely, number 16, active solar heating uses fans to get heat to thermal storage, so that's also true. There's hot water, solar hot water arrays. An array is the thing on the roof. Like a solar electrical array is the stack, right? There's individual panels and then they make the whole array is the whole group of them. So did we talk too much about solar hot water? I'm not sure we did in this class. You know, the interesting thing is solar hot water is just a bunch of tubes that are painted black and the sun the black absorbs the water and they're put in a glass box on your roof and the sun heats up that water and the water siphons the heat, pulls it up, and then it goes down with gravity. And the 70s was when that really hit, late 60s and 70s. And people all over the country were making their own things homemade because you just need a box and a glass layer and pipe, and you can use PVC and just spray paint it black. So they were making a lot of those. And until the heat pump water heater, which is only about, most of us have just heard about it in the last 5 years, but if you hear about it 5 years ago, it's probably 10, 15 years old, right? That takes the place of that now because it runs on electricity, right? So you don't need a fossil fuel to heat your water anymore. Anyway, people still use those, and they've got really elaborate manufactured ones. Yeah, Robin.
How much of the piping needs to be like exposed on the roof to like heat the water
Enough water?
Yeah.
Well, I think I told you this story a couple of blocks from where I used to take a class when it was a Saturday class. It must have been, it could have been the solar class. And we go to this old man's house a couple of blocks up, old man and his wife, And he had both photovoltaic, electrical, and then he had one, it looked like it was about 10 foot by 8 foot, which is pretty good size. Usually they're more like 4 by 8, but he had like an 8 by 10. And he said he got enough hot water all year round from that. Now they couldn't take, 20-minute showers, but if he just did average showers and baths, he could do that. So I don't have any figures on it. The arrays vary, by the piping, and sometimes they use copper pipes, and there's a lot of variations. It's hard to get a number, but anecdotally, that's what he said. Which is pretty amazing, right? I mean, and if you use a lot of water, you could just put a couple up, but they're simple plumbing. And we used to go and look at the plumbing coming off the roof and into the garage, and he had a holding tank for it. When he wasn't using it, filled up like a big hot water tank. And some people have holding tanks, and then they have either the holding tank can heat like a hot water heater, or there's a hot water heater, and then they use it to kind of top off the hot water heater. So it may not be enough by itself, but it's plenty to help another system. But I think with we're going electrical, so that would work in a non-fossil fuel environment. But I think we're going with the heat pump. Now, people say that heat pump hot water heaters don't always have enough water. People complain it doesn't keep hot fast enough. And so a lot of them are hybrids. So they'll turn on a regular electrical, hot heat, which is a coil, which is inefficient. But if you only need a little hot water, it's not a big deal. So a lot of those hybrids have that for the need, if there's a need for like a little more. And I imagine they'll keep improving those. So pretty soon you'll just get one tank and it'll be plenty sufficient for a family. We're so spoiled, we have to have tons of hot water anytime we want it, a lot of the world uses these solar hot water things, and because they don't need electricity. But when does the sun come out and heat? All day long, right? So the water from these things isn't hot until 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, until 8 or 9 at night. So people can't take a hot shower or bath in the morning before work, which is the American style. And most of those countries that have those, which is, good God, most of the Middle East, India, a lot of Europe, a big part of the world, they just change their regime and they take their showers and wash their dishes at night. So they just, line up their lifestyle with what they have. In the green building, we'll talk more about. The book we have is a whole chapter on it. Combines photovoltaics and solar hot water. So this time we just did, because we were talking about passive houses and zero energy houses. That's a new thing. And both those use passive solar heating, so we covered it. Hey. So yeah, let's see. What's that?
You're gonna look away,
Good. So we're on page 2. Oh, well, number 16. 17 said no house should have more window glass than 12% of its floor area. I think that's a regulation, because it'll overheat and it'll be horrible to live in.
You're basically looking at a big magnified glass.
Yeah. And so that was true. And then the one below it, the first 7% of that 12, say you do have 12% of your floor area with windows, only 7% of that 12% will be covered by the average solar mass that a house has, which means sheetrock walls, The framing, the lumber, the floors, even wooden floors, but slab under them. And furniture, that's enough to offset, to absorb that heat. Above 7%, you're gonna have to do something different. So and that's where I gave you those formulas that was on that passive solar page. And it had so many square feet of floor for a foot of window. And there were different ones. There was I don't have it with me, but the best one is the slab on the floor because the sun comes right in the window and heats that. And I think I think it was 8.8 feet of floor for every foot. So if you had 5, 5% of your window area, whatever that would be, then you'd need to cancel it with enough floor. Say that was 10 feet, it would be more than that, but just say 10 feet, then you'd have to have 10 times 8.8, so you'd have to have 80 feet, 80 square feet, which is, 4 times 20, so that's why building with a long corridor is really good, because then you get a lot of sun coming in on that floor. But you can also use the back wall. And it's debatable whether that wall has to be directly in the sun or reflected sunlight. And then it can also be floor that's covered with a carpet or that's out of the sun most of the time. You can use that floor, you just can't use it with numbers as much. So with those 3 things, you can take care of that other 5% if you have the full 12%. So unless people are purposely designing their house as a passive solar house to save energy bills, and they're usually going to have around 7% windows. They don't have to do anything to take care of that. And 19, passive solar heating sunlight must be absorbed by adequate thermal mass. Mobile home questions were all true. At 22, I spaced out and didn't finish the question, even though most people answered it. I'm not sure what they were answering. 90% put a true or false down, so you must have been beaming the answer to yourself.
Looking at the storm windows.
Yes. So I crossed it out, needless to say. 23 cool roofs, y'all got right. They're usually a light coating of some material that reflects the sun back. And the material the coating's made of has to do with ease of application and longevity. I don't know. People had the name. What's this stuff called? Something elastic. It's a word we don't use too much anymore, but there's material made out of it. Strong tie question. So there's basically just connectors and fasteners. So connectors are all the hardware that connects things. And fasteners are all the things that fasten the connectors to the frame.
Hangers and nets.
What?
Hangers and nets.
Yeah, right.
And straps below.
So Robin corrected me, engineers could also
Yeah.
designate hardware and they usually don't use an architect or engineer won't. I don't think typically put the fasteners down, because if they put the connectors down, it's automatic what fasteners they are. I've had some work done by a structural engineer a couple of years ago on my balcony. I can't remember if he put fasteners down. We did specify connectors.
So what's the answer to that one? False, because I thought you
It's
wanted-
true. No, it's true.
Yeah, I thought you wanted.
Well, did you put false because?
I put false and then wrote engineer.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did
okay,
the same.
okay, I'll give you credit. And 27, what kind of fasteners go with connectors? Nails, screws, flags. Yeah, when I, 26 was what are fasteners, and instead of putting the things that, oh, hey, instead of putting the things that go, that fasten, everybody listed examples, then the next question was also that, so they were both kind of the same.
What kind of fasteners don't go? That's the exact same question that's coming up. Which
And then where to, 28, where to find fasteners? They're usually stamped on the fastener itself, but not always, because you know, when you order connectors, when you order connectors, usually you order a little bit more and you have left over, and so contractors save those. So if you have a connector that's 20 years old, it may not have the stamp, so the new ones all do. But if you can't find it on it, then just go to the catalog, which is online. Easy enough. 3 qualities of a nail: length, diameter, and finish. What are the finish issues? Anybody? And why? What are they? Why are they different?
Because of the treatment of wood that they use them, so like galvanized.
Yeah, so for treated wood, and also for galvanized are rust proof, right?
Yeah.
So when you have something on the roof like that has
Yeah.
water, you want to have.
Or on deck or anything.
Yeah.
like that.
What's electric galvanized? That's the same exterior use? or-
Yeah, it's the same use. I think it's just a better quality than.
So they recommend hot dip.
It's more expensive, isn't it, than the?
Yeah.
And they recommend hot dip with pressure treated. but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pressure treat is pretty decent now. You don't get, when it first came out, you'd handle it and your hands would burn a little bit, just a little tiny bit.
Way.
Oh, you know, that's
They were
not
just-
bad. That's not bad. It's creosote and a railroad tie.
Oh.
You know, railroad ties, you handle that all day.
It's a chemical now.
Yeah. And I think they finally found a suitable toxic chemical. It's not too bad. I mean, it's toxic because you're killing bacteria and stuff. But the idea is not to get it so toxic that you suffer. And then 30, you all got that right. Wire framing nail guns not good for joist hanger mounting. You know, we have a dedicated, they call it a dedicated nailer. Yeah, next door. When we first got nailers, I got one of those because I wanted it. They're expensive, you know, the same price as regular. In fact, I think they're more than regular nailers.
Some, Wall makes one for like 300.
Yeah.
Costco makes.
Yeah.
Wall on that.
Yeah. You know, I don't know why they don't make nail guns that take specified nails out. Isn't that kind of weird? I mean, they may now. You know. But for a long time, they're always slightly smaller diameter and slightly less length.
There should be QB though,
Weird.
5-star.
Round hole in a connector means always fill. Domes and what was the other one? Tabs are for 45 angles. That's a great thing, isn't it? You don't have to think. Anytime you don't have to think, it's good. 33, I blew it, but I said width, I wanted depth. It's a whole different issue. So the depth, those hangers are made at an exact depth, right? So if you hang the depth off of a beam, they're gonna, that's okay. But then when you put a cross, something hanging on it, if that's wider than the beam, it's gonna stick up above. So that was what that question was about, but because I put width instead of, I got some pretty creative answers. That were pretty good. They were actually true. But I threw it out because of my mistake. Okay. So Oh, yeah, he's still got plenty of energy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 more hours. and that's it.
So.
I miss you. Bob. I miss you.
So let's go into the prep for the final. And then if we're just too groggy, we'll take a break and come back at some point, but let's start it so we can get rid of that time. You know, all these months, Jacob, I had the computer there and you had to watch it. I could have just set it up here so I can see it. So tonight, they didn't have another part. It was put in this one.
Yeah,
So I thought, oh, what am I gonna do? And I thought, oh, wait a second, I can just put it there.
oh, I enjoyed my career in the.
Yeah, you were great. Oh, well. Hey, just as a incidental FYI, they have I don't know if you guys get cable TV, any of you? Probably you don't, because you guys are into, podcasts and everything else, so. But they've had a lot of stations on stuff that they're doing, technological improvements for fighting climate change. And man, they're really hauling butt, and they're thinking they're gonna get to some of the deadlines on time. But one of them, tidal energy, I finally saw a whole show on it. I've been waiting for it because there's so many tides, but it's not the tides we have, just the waves. Because I've been thinking all along it was that, but it's actually tides, the whole tide comes in and out. And there's only a few places, not a few, but well, a few in comparison to all the places that have this kind of tide, like around Scotland, the Hebrides Islands, there's a bunch, the big one that everyone knows about in the Maritimes, what's that? The huge tide that's in Nova Scotia. Getting closer, what's the town? Come on, you guys. Bay of Fundy, right? Some of you have heard of that. Huge tide. And the Scots are taking the lead in that. Who would guess? But they've been manufacturing these giant things, big things that go on the bottom of the sea that have propellers like windmills. And then they have one, now they're starting, another company's putting them floating and the things go down. And those they can really adjust to make sure they're not fish trails or. But man, so they're really cranking out energy from those. Because a lot of places don't have the wind or the solar that's continuous, but those things are pretty continuous. Then I saw one on fusion. God, that just blew my mind. They're actually in England. I don't know where it is. They're actually making a fusion, what do you call it? Machine, a fusion reactor. And the temperature of that is the temperature of the sun, just a few million degrees, right? So you're thinking, well, I always thought, well, how the shit are they gonna hold something that's a million, because we don't have any material that won't melt at that. They solve that. They use a magnetic field that keeps it in place. They're off and running. They expect, I think it's like 2 years away.
Yeah.
They're gonna do their first run.
Like 6 months ago, they finally did a fusion reaction where the lasers produced less energy than
Right.
reaction.
So they have laser ones. They have two different types now.
Yeah.
They're both going, and England's doing both of them. But this one is the amount of money, though. It's like so huge, and the technology is all new. So that's going to cost, right? They have to invent everything. But if that works, I mean, I think we just should reduce the population really simply. But I'm not, I don't determine things.
Wait, how are we gonna do that?
So how are we going to reduce the population? But they're spending billions on this thing, but if they do it, there's no, or relatively no nuclear waste. And it's 24/7 power. So it'll be a really boon for global warming if they do it.
Oh, there's no waste.
No way, what?
There's no waste, you said?
Yeah, they say there's no waste. I think it's a little bit, but nothing like fission reactors.
And what?
Because it doesn't burn. Like fission uses uranium and plutonium, which are really radioactive, and so there's nothing you can do with those, but try to find a place to let them degrade for 1,000 years,
Yeah.
which is the real ridiculous problem with those. This uses helium, no, hydrogen and helium. Couple forms of hydrogen and helium, so those aren't radioactive, so there's no,
So it's just like safe.
oh yeah, much safer.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I still, if like that magnetic thing ever defaulted, there might be blowups and things, but it wouldn't push a radioactive poof around, you know, it might destroy the plant and the people there. I'm expecting that might happen, but it's amazing how confident they are, of something that's so new. And I mean, everything has to be so precise. But it's, you know, if you like engineering, it's like a really interesting story. But people 10 years ago said, oh, that's never gonna happen. It's just impossible. And they're, you know, couple, 3 years, I mean, they have some basic reactions already that have worked. Couple, 3 years, they're gonna get it to be commercial grade or universal. That'd be great. And then there's guys capturing carbon. There's just a lot of, you know, it's too bad we have to, I hate to have humans depend just on technological solutions, because those cost money, a lot of money. And they burn up precious resources. But that's kind of the mode we're in now, so we're gonna go that way, so. Anyway, all right. Now for the final prep, so Elias is just in time, I have some stuff for you. Your midterm, but I didn't. Thanks. Okay, so you got pencils and paper?
Sure.
I see pads and pens. You need paper? Okay, so where does Timmy keep his paper? Come on, you guys. I had it where I could find it.
I'll get him some.
I'm no
paper.
longer,
I don't think Timmy has paper.
I'm no longer the head honcho here.
Two by
but-
four, 2 by 6. Hey, Patrick, I got it.
I got it. Oh.
Hey, here's some right here. We talked about it.
I said only from 10
In case you need paper. It's a thing of the past. I realize that. Okay, ready? Okay, I might give you a problem about U factor, like I'll give you a U factor and I'll ask you for the red, for the R value. And I won't tell you what that specific number is, but you just put 1 over that number and that gives you the other one, right? Yeah. Okay,
Dude, what's the formula? for that?
1 over R equals U, or 1 over U equals R. Can't go wrong. Then I'll ask you, what does the solar heat gain coefficient measure? And you know, that handout on the windows have all that stuff just defined. There's a sheet toward the back that has the whole list of them. And same with visible transmittance measures. Visible transmission measures how much visible light is emitted by the window, true or false. Don't answer it. But so, and you can find out what that is.
What is
Visible transmittance. It's how much light. No, you know what's interesting is, this is an interesting thing, it always gets me. There's three kinds of energy that comes through the window. What is it? No, 3 kinds of radiation. What are they?
Thermal, UV.
What?
Infrared. Well, infrared, sorry.
Infrared.
UV?
Ultraviolet.
Infrared, UV, and visible. So they all have heat, but infrared has the most heat, so that's like a heat lamp. And the UV is like very small wavelength. But the other one, the third one is called visible light. And because that's the light you can see. Now it's kind of weird that there's a specific range of light that you can see, you know? That's why they call it visible light. You can't see UV, you can't see ultraviolet, but you can feel those. your body can feel the UV after you've been out in it. Then the thing on e-coatings, whether or not they reduce visible light. In other words, do they shade a window or not? Now, there's a question about U value. So R value, the higher you want is the better, right? You want resistance of the heat, you want to keep the heat. So obviously, higher R value, you know, a wall, it's gone from R11 to R13 and 2x6 to R19. So we're always trying to get it more. U value, since it's the reciprocal, the inverse, you want lower numbers. The lower U value is better insulated. So I'll ask you a problem that uses that will come in on.
Wait, what was the question? Like,
I'll ask you a question about something having a higher or lower U value. Yeah, and if you know it's the reciprocal of R value, you'll get it. I can't say much more without actually giving them,
yeah,
which I probably should do, but you'll get it. So the low-E coatings, remember there's a couple places to put them, and if you have a triple pane or you have panes with some of those plastic panes, there's more options, but what's one of the things you're trying to do with e-coatings? There's two main things you're trying to do, and there's some other things that you can do. Do you remember?
Reduce heat coming to the house.
Yeah, you're coming which way? Into the house?
Into the house.
Yeah, that definitely you want to do. You live in Florida or someplace where it's hot, you want that on keeping it. And then what's the other thing it does?
Reduces heat from leaving.
Yeah, keeps the heat in the house. And for both of those, you'd put them on. They both will do both of those, but if you put them in if you put one, it'll have more of an effect. There's passive solar heating where you don't want anything because you definitely don't want something that's going to impede the light because then you lose the heat. So yeah, so for passive solar, you want them on the south typically, and you don't want any coating, right? We talked about fire egress windows. What are those? Anybody remember?
How do you spell that?
Egress, egress, meaning to leave, to get out.
Are they
Is that like a
the ones
fire?
that swing?
No. It's not a special type of window, it's a special size window. And it's the minimum size that will allow you to climb out in case of a fire. And you need it for all the rooms that you spend a lot of time that don't have a double, exit, more than one exit. So your bedroom, typically bedrooms just have one door. And then if there's a fire in your house, you don't want to go through that door because you could get backdrafted or run into the fire. So you have to be able to leave another way. So a bedroom, a study, places where you spend a lot of time no, a study doesn't. Has to have a window that acts as an exit door. And so they have to be a certain size. That's what a neat was.
Do you know what the size is?
Well, yeah, I was on that.
We'll go hefty then. I'll think.
It's.
Well, they're not,
there's a little bathroom doors.
Okay, got it.
it's on, the handout
Oh, I see, okay.
that,
Gotcha.
the handout you got last time had a whole page of it.
Egress windows in California are minimum of 6 square feet.
Oh.
But that is true, but they have to be a certain shape too, because you can have a 1 foot by 6 foot, and none of us can get a 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like for 24 inches, you got 20 inches on bottom.
Right,
Okay.
and they have to be a
Height, right?
maximum height at the bottom, so you can climb out.
If there was a fire, you'd do it.
I will be fine everyone. These would.
So within, so many feet of a door, exterior door. If a glass window or side light is within, so many feet of a door, it has to be safety glass. And I'll give you on the test what that. What the minimum distance is. It's on that sheet too, that was there. Okay, we talked just barely about awnings and sunscreens. But I'll give you this one, they're a good exterior shading for windows. It's true or false? Yeah, I mean, they are good exterior shading. Anybody ever see in commercial buildings, banks, these cast concrete blocks that, had designs in them that was empty? There's a few places in Santa Barbara on State Street that still have them. It's not a new style, so only the old buildings have them. But those are really great for letting some light through and
They're good.
shading places. They call them brise soleil. And sometimes they really architecturally set off a building, but we're not into that so much. So we talked about different kinds of trees for shading somewhere along the line, probably in the lesson on site management. But so in terms of shading, there's two kinds of trees, right? Evergreen, which means literally they're evergreen, like pine trees. So those are good for shading, but since they're evergreen, they'll also shade in the winter when you may want the heat from the sun. So a better tree would be deciduous, which means it drops the leaves. And those are, well, it's funny, California oaks are evergreen, but back east the oaks are deciduous. Maples, oaks, those kind of trees. I think, does anybody know about what's that big tree we have with the big trunk in California, Southern California? Sycamore? Do those ever lose their leaves completely? I've lived here my whole life, I can't tell you.
I don't think completely.
They do some, but I think they keep them, so they're probably not
I don't know.
deciduous, but those aren't good trees to have next to your house anyway.
Yeah, they drop their leaves.
Oh, okay, okay. And those are native, that's one of the few. The only native trees are. The oak, our kind of oak, which are evergreen, and the sycamore, and we have willow, there's a willow.
Willow, Monterey cypress,
Oh, yeah, there's a cypress, yeah, or any of that.
redwood,
Yeah, up north redwood, yeah.
and pine.
They think the redwood trees came from China. Like 1 million years ago, so they didn't come on a Chinese freight ship. So how did they get here?
They walked over the land.
They
bridge.
walked over. A tree drops its seeds, and maybe animals get them and eat them and poop them out 100 yards. So that next generation is 100 yards. So think of how many 100-yard progressions would have to go from China to America.
Do you know about the land bridge?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes seeds go on water and they replant on islands, a lot of the Pacific Islands have seeds.
I thought some people are now like kind of skeptical about the land bridges.
Okay.
Which are you?
But
Yeah.
And the leaves.
So exterior storm windows, which in a wealthy town aren't probably used very much, but for trailers, they're good, because they're trailer windows aren't usually particularly good, and so you put that extra pane. And anybody where it won't look funny to have those, In New England, everybody uses them, it's not a big deal at all. And they have a weather stripping around them, but it's not real tight because, you know, they warp but. Even if though they can leak a little bit, there's still the sun coming in there and warming up that air does add insulation to that window. So they're a really cheap way to, if you're really hard put to warm your house up and you don't have a lot of money, you can get those single pane and they're single pane mess. But they're, the gap at the bottom of the door is usually the door's biggest air leak. That's a true or false. What do you think? Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, now we have, usually people buy a pre-hung prefab door from Home Depot or Lowe's. Or, you know, they have higher versions of them, but they're pre-framed and they have all the weatherproofing. And those don't usually leak, except if your house settles and the door frame parallelograms a little bit, then that door could have it. And if you have a site-built door where it was built by a carpenter and he put his own weather stripping on, that might happen. And then he might do a crappy job too, so there'd be a space. But, you know, lucky we have those really great weather stripping pieces. What do they call those? The sweeps, and you can attach them at an angle. So you just put them on your door and then you push them down even with the ground and screw them in. God, what a great invention. One of the few great, simple. Because a lot, you know, especially if you're in a windy area, there's a lot of air that comes in a gap at the bottom of your door. Capillary action. We talked about that just briefly. That's capillary, CAPILLARY, like your smallest blood vessel. And we didn't talk about the types of water movement. We talked about heat movement because that's more important, but water also has different movements. And capillary action is one of those. And it's the last one we figured out. And it's a pressure. It's if you have a small crack or a passageway and there's a pressure differential, it will suck water into it. And it can even suck water against gravity. It can, if it's facing down, it can suck water up. So a lot of people look at their door and they go, well, it's a crack there, but it's up. The water's not going to gravitate into that. Well, it won't gravitate into that, but if it crawls along there, it'll get sucked into it. So you have to deal with that. Excessive moisture in a crawl space can be a problem. That's true or false. We talked about that. You know, the people haven't put any kind of plastic air barrier between their foundation, between their crawl space and their floors. What do you usually put down? You put down joists, then you put down plywood, then you put down a finished floor, or maybe an underlayment, none of which are totally airtight. So, you know, you'd be wise to put down a vapor barrier there. And it's not that expensive. But
There's no vapor barriers.
I had to take one out and not see it out. I had to take one out so we could reinstall one.
if you put a vapor barrier, if you staple it to a joist
I
floor,
wish I had done that.
then you have to walk across that. That's one of the reasons they don't do it. Contractors don't do things that are dangerous or cost them any money. You know, then you've got it and you can slip on that, you know, it's visqueen or puncture it. But you could put it above, but then you got to contend with your whatever subfloor or finished floor you put it on, and sometimes plastic's not a good thing to have in the way of a subfloor. And you could nail a, if you use float cell foam
Yeah.
underneath,
Yeah.
that would take care of everything. That's why that's the best place for it, really. Really make your house snug. It's expensive and toxic, but there's a little give and take everywhere, huh? Rain gardens and pervious ground material can help rainwater to underground water table. That's true, right? Rain garden and pervious, ground material, like a pervious concrete. Pervious is the opposite of impervious. Most we've heard impervious means it can't go in, but pervious is the opposite. And, we've sort of backed off on that. I don't know why. Of course, now we don't need our water tables are all replenished, but it's gonna go away again. This may have been a one-off flood year. Hard to tell. We've had really flood years before in Santa Barbara, right? I remember when I first came to grad school, the airport just flooded. It was like under a couple feet of water, the whole airport. And you'd walk downtown and it was just flooding everywhere.
There's snow in Carpinteria today.
Yeah, there was what?
Snow. on the
Really?
Mountains, yeah,
Oh, in the mountains, yeah.
yeah, not in the town.
No, I doubt it.
But I saw it from Carpinteria.
You know, what's that stuff called? The little balls?
Well,
Hail. The hail's getting worse too. The reports are giant baseball size now. Even little ones like that will dent your car. Like I remember being in New Mexico in the desert and the hailstorm would come and you really want to find an underpass because it'll just freaking dent your car. That's no good. But think about a golf ball. That'd break your windshield, you know?
that's the.
Yeah, well. So pervious concrete is a second question. It does allow rainwater to soak in. Oh, drainage plane. Did we talk about that? You wouldn't know it if we did, right? So it's a fancy name. I don't know why they do it, but I mean, how many people think of a plain as a flat area? Well, a plain and land, right? Llano and that kind of thing, yeah. But you don't think of a plain vertically too much as a separation or. But building performance people have come up with the word drainage plane because it drains rainwater. So it's just really rainwater protection. And what do? So Tyvek was one of the first things we learned to do. Oh, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, however old that is, because it doesn't let bulk water in, so it can rain against the wall and it won't go in. But there's a best practice, and I don't know if we talked about it or if I had a handout. It's in some of the books, like I think it's in Modern Carpentry. But the preferred way now is to put Tyvek on and then put strips, like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch strips of wood, every 16 inches on center on that, and then put your siding or your stucco, whatever, onto those strips. So there's a little airspace behind it. Then you have a gap at the top where water can evaporate. And then if you have a gap to the outside, then you have to put little membranes that keep the bees out in the watt because they'll go in there. So you have to put a little thing that has very small holes, too small for bees, but it'll let the air out. They make those. I used to have one in class here somewhere. And also at the bottom, you have to do that, and you have to have it at the bottom so it can drain out. So that's the preferred area, because if you have siding, wood siding, that's vulnerable. It have knots and stuff in it. The knots can fall. If you go look at the wood siding on our tiny home, you'll start seeing, because we haven't maintained it properly, unfortunately, but you'll see places where water could get in, in a driving rain. And if it gets in there, but there's a space where it can dry, then if there's enough, a bulk of it will just fall down, and what won't fall down because it doesn't have enough mass altogether will stick to the sides, but then the air through there will evaporate it, and you won't have any water that rots out your wall. So that's the preferred drainage plane. So I'll ask you to describe that. So it's walls, sheathing, Tyvek, which is your standard wall down in Santa Barbara. And then on top of that, you'll have strips, vertical strips, every 16 inch on center. And then you'll have siding, horizontal siding on top of that. That's for, let's say it's for a siding application. Stucco doesn't have the same problem, but. Okay. So, why don't all exterior windows cause overheating? There's a few think questions on here, but you don't have to think very hard.
What was the question again?
Why don't all exterior windows cause overheating?
Did I ever get sun?
Yeah, they could be on the side of the house that doesn't get sun. Or in the shade. That's one, and they could have E coating on them. So those are the basic reasons. When designed for controlling light and solar heat, Venetian blind slats should be bright white or polished aluminum. Anybody ever had polished aluminum blinds? That is a finish.
Like outside blinds in Europe, they have a lot of those.
Yeah.
Where you have like the box.
Yes, so outside blinds are better. But it's not a tradition here. So Europe has it. They're actually better because you don't want that sun to get into the window. And outside blinds will prevent it. When you got inside blinds, the sun's already entered your house, but some will reflect off it, so it's better than nothing. And reflective surfaces are white and silver are the best ones for those kind of blinds. So when you guys, it's a really hot day in the summer and you're going off to work or school, what do you do with your house to keep it from getting overheated during the day? You close all the doors, it could be out back doors. You close all the doors and windows and put shades across if you have them. It seems like you're making it stuffy, you know, but it's better than leaving everything open. You think, oh, I'll leave it open and it'll be a breeze at night. Well, there might be some breeze, but the heat coming in will really stay in your house. So it is okay to put exterior storm windows on emergency egress windows. Where do you mount the storm windows from? Outside. So you're not going to be able to undo them. You could probably crash through them, you know. If there's a fire there, no little storm window is going to stop you from getting through, but you don't want to. It's not going to be tempered, so you don't want to fool with that. Some storm windows are plastic or lucite, but yeah, so that's one place you really don't want to put a storm window. So you know that we talked about the 3 types of radiation. As long as you know those, you'll get this question right. Because I added a 4th one. I don't know, it's not that one. Let me see it. Yeah. Okay, last page. I'm going to ask you what fenestration means.
What? Fenestration.
Fenestration. We talked about it. I even wrote it on the board a couple weeks ago. It's used in the building code, so you should really know. Oh, I didn't finish what I was going to tell you. When you have the solar hot water on the roof, the original ones were they didn't have any electronics involved with them. And so if you live in a climate where it would freeze, if you leave the water in the pipes, it'll burst the pipes, right? So you got to drain the water. So originally, if it was a passive system with no electricity, there was a little clock that would turn it and the water would drain. So you had to manually go out when you knew it was going to freeze which could be every night and open that up. Pretty soon they said, hey, this is BS, we have electricity. We'll put a sensor on there. When it gets close to 32, it'll automatically open the thing. But then that becomes an active system because it's not electricity. So you can have, and then there's other things that electricity do for a solar hot water, but. So what is solar hot water? That's a question. And that's heating the pipes by sunlight on your roof. Remember we described that. What is solar electricity? So those are also arrays on your roof, but they're called photovoltaic arrays. And they create electricity instead of hot water. Then I have one, most collated nail guns are undersized for joist hangers. True or false? Wire SDS screws, we talked about that earlier. Wire SDS deck screws better in framing connection than drywall screws. Well, I'll tell you, because we went over it, but that's not something new. They have better shear strength, and shear strength is your,
wire SDS.
well, when it's in sideways, you're up and down strength.
It's like folding that and making it.
So drywall screws are made in a mold. So they just have a mold and they fill the mold, and so they're all just the metal's just glommed. But a nail, they take strands of steel and they pull them, and that makes the nail stronger this way because it's got strands in it rather than just an amount. So somebody figured out you could use, I mean, we knew about nails were fine and they were working, but then someone wanted to make screws that would do that because sometimes screws are handier. Has anybody ever put in a post base or anything that had to go, any framing hardware that took a bolt that went through a 4x4 or 6x6 and you had to drill it?
Yeah.
And how did you drill it? Usually from both sides? No, you're not supposed to now, but in the old days, we used to do it from both sides because you had a better chance of maybe. And then you'd ream it out if it wasn't right. But then they found out with earthquakes, that extra space is not good because it'll tend to let the earthquake yank on it. So they said, now you have to drill one way. And it has to be just a hair bigger than the size of the bolt, like a 16. It's still hard to meet that back hole though, right? So somebody said, well, why don't we come up with a bunch of screws that you can screw in and not have to have bolts? And they said, yeah, but the drywall screws don't have enough shear strength. And then Simpson came along and made a screw that was like a nail that has a lot of shear strength. So now we can screw almost everything where we used to do the through bolt. It makes it so much easier. You're just on each side screwing straight into wood. I mean, it's
Better than the Tico nails that fall right after.
Oh, dude.
yeah.
You said on the joist hangers?
So that's another revolution I think we've had.
Yeah.
It's been great is
That's
SDH.
really cool, very good.
Actually, what was the one right before that about the nail?
Collated nails, nail gun nails.
Yeah.
They're undersized for joist hangers. At least they used to be. I don't know if they're making them, but
It depends on your material, like, so it's like 2x6, it's like what you would order.
well, so they're probably making them longer than they did, right?
Yeah.
But they still may not be. Are they diameter wise good though?
Yeah.
Oh, they are. Do they have those? Well, answer that true anyway. It's an old question. In passive solar homes, I'll give you this because we didn't discuss this. Wall and floor mass in a passive solar home should be from 4 to 6 inches. Less than 4 is not enough to absorb enough heat, and after 6 inches is redundant. It doesn't absorb that much more, so it's a waste of material. The 4 to 6 is optimum for either your floor slab or your concrete wall in a passive solar home. In a residence not using passive solar heating, what is the maximum percent of floor space to wall? From floor space to walls. We discussed that earlier, Elias, is 7%. If your windows are not bigger than 7% of your total floor space, then that's usually what they go, because you don't need any kind of extra mass. If you go above that, like from 7 to 12, then you'll have to add additional mass here and there. Okay, what is one advantage of solar tubes? You guys remember what solar tubes are?
The daylighting.
Natural
Yeah.
light.
They're daylighting, anybody know?
Brings us natural light.
Well, so why wouldn't you put a skylight, for instance?
We can do directed more. To the spot, like you can put it more direct to where you want.
Yeah. So a lot of times there's something in the way, there's framing in the attic, right? And you can't get a skylight because you have to, you know. But solar tube bends, so you can bend it around anything and have it come down. And all you see is that illuminated spot in the ceiling. You don't know that above that it's going different ways. So, yeah, it's really helpful for that, because a lot of times you couldn't get any light because the framing was just too bundled up in the seats. Why use daylighting? We didn't do a lot on daylighting, but anybody? Daylighting is using natural light from outside as opposed to electric lights, obviously during the day. Save energy is one, sure. Huh? Yeah? Would produce heat?
Health maybe?
Yeah, health. They found that daylight's a lot healthier for people psychologically. Kids learn a lot better. They've done a lot of tests with scores in buildings. You have to really do a lot of testing to make sure all the other factors, because there's a lot of variables. But they conclude that it's better for schools for kids. So anytime you can use natural light, it's good. What is the difference between heat pump water heating and active solar hot water? I just said earlier that one's going to replace the other probably. But you know what a solar heat pump is, right? I mean, if you're going to compare those two, you have to know what they are. We did see a movie, but it's what power source does a solar heat pump run on? Yeah, it runs on electricity.
Right, it's the difference between which two.
That and the active solar hot water.
Active solar power.
Yeah. So you could just say they're different. You could just describe each one and say, voila, that's how they're different. I said active solar, so that means it's using a little bit of electricity, not as much as the heat pump. But the solar hot water heater is cheaper. I mean, it's free after you buy it. But a heat pump water heater you can put in closet in your garage like an ordinary water heater, or you can just swap them out. But a solar hot water panel with pipes on your roof, as a, you know, you got to have roof space for it, blah blah blah, pipe it down to a tank. Okay, the gray water movie we saw, when he was putting in, we didn't look at the whole movie, but we went as far as where he was saying, when you come off the laundry, you have to have a dual valve. And one goes to the line that goes to your gray water field, and the other goes to the sewer. Just like if you didn't have any gray water. So why does it have to be that dual?
They don't contaminate,
You know what?
like cross contaminate.
No. No, they have other things for that. They had that, siphon that did that, but. So sometimes you wash stuff that,
Oh.
wouldn't be good for your garden. You know, like if you're a mechanic, sometimes you'll have coveralls and things that are full of grease and God knows what, or if you're a painter, you might have a lot of toxins. And that stuff shouldn't go in your garden, especially, even if you're gonna eat stuff off a tree, it's probably not safe. That stuff should just go down the sewers. No, you wouldn't do it when you're using it, but if you're doing a load that you know has got stuff in it, then you just wouldn't use that for gray water. Most of us don't have things that are really bad and closed. You know, typical, but if you know, a lot of professions have stuff. And remember, we said you don't need a permit for laundry gray water systems. You do need it for anything else. Gray water, but. And you can, and the permits aren't onerous, the ones for the other stuff, you just have to make sure you do it the way they want, you plumb it the way they want. You know, have filters or whatever they ask, but gray water, but laundry, they've given the okay. What space heater, I don't know where I made up these questions, I think I was stoned when I did that. What space heater? What space heater devices or device does an electric heat pump replace? I say might replace, you know, every place is different, of course. But, oh, what do most people have for heat?
AC.
Oh,
AC? Who said AC?
Me.
Yeah, you could, electric heat. So you, so you could have electric heat. We don't have a lot of, well, we do. Space heat, small space heat, we use electric heaters, right? When I grew up in West LA in the dark ages, you know, before dinosaurs, they had wall heaters that were electric. And cheap, but not anymore. You can still find them. You can see them in old houses here. People just don't get rid of them. They just don't use them.
There were electric heaters for that one?
Yeah. So, but typically they'll replace a faucet, you know, a forced air furnace heater, right? How many have forced air systems in their house? Heaters. Of the people that are listening. Yeah, me too. All that's gonna change. I'm reading this book, really great book. It's kind of thick. But it's a history of the effect of nature on civilization. Well, on before civilization, our whole species. But volcanoes and global warming, we've had other episodes of global warming and oh God, really amazing. Humans get pummeled quite a bit. I mean, it's changed a lot of, changed a lot of species. I mean, we've had a lot of extinction. And you know, it's amazing anybody makes it through those, but we're the grand result of all that hard work by animals and plants. That's good. We're doing our best to not survive. Okay, groundwater needs to be either moved through a yard to a storm drain or made to settle in rain gardens, sure fall. Yeah, I mean, those are your choices. Before, people didn't care where the water went, but they can do damage to your home if it's not, if it doesn't go through your yard in the right way. And then you can also have toxic in your yard. So if you do move it to a storm drain, make sure it's not picking up anything you've used in your gardening. And then then the other option is to actually keep the water. Oh, okay, next one, there's only 2 left. But everyone's glad to hear that, huh? Where do heat pumps get their heat from?
Gas.
Huh?
Gas.
No,
There.
no, they don't burn anything. Yeah, from the air, from the heat in the air. You know, I was looking at something the other day and was talking about the boiling point of the. Stuff they, I guess, yeah, it's like 40 degrees Fahrenheit belows, minus 40. We think of things boiling as being, you know, way up 100 degrees. What's boiling point of water? And this 112, 212, yeah, we think of that as boiling point, but you know, different chemicals boiling point can, they found one that boils way low, so they can get this, they can just suck this heat out of the air. That's pretty ingenious technology, you know? And I guess they can get cool out of the air too, oppositely, you know, like air conditioning do that, they get their,
Well, it's pull the heat out of that house.
yeah, yeah.
How long does refrigerant last, though, like?
Well, that's a great question. I think Elias is the only one in this room to have even a clue.
You gotta dispose of it too, right, like it's hazardous?
Well, yeah, more or less, like, it lasts more or less forever, like, as long as, like, you don't have any leaks. Because it is like a gas, so as soon as you have a leak, it will escape and all that, and it's pressurized.
Yeah.
So,
Stuff itself.
yeah, I don't think it should at least, like, if it's not leaking, it should last till like your AC.
Okay.
Then like, you have to feed anyways.
Yeah. No, it's great technology. We can make things that don't leak. I mean, it costs money, making things that leak too. And just, you know, sell it to you, and hope it doesn't leak for 10 years. But, yeah, I'm sold on that, but that's great. That whole, who invented that, right? When air conditioning? I guess that was the first use of a refrigerator. You think before air conditioning? I should look that up. That's probably really interesting. That's ingenious. Can't say you know that, right? Okay, what is the difference between passive solar homes and 100% active solar homes?
Passive uses some electricity, active does. Oh, natural, what's the other way? What's the difference in passive? Oh, cause active just uses natural like sunlight, right?
Let me see, my other question. I'm kind of stuck here, hold on.
Wait,
I can tell I'm tired, but I keep looking at the same word.
So it looks like.
Passive solar.
In Austria.
So a passive solar home is the one we're talking about where the heat comes in and lights and heats a thermal storage. Right?
okay.
That's what storage. 100% active solar homes. So a passive solar home may not heat the whole, may not be all the heating. Right? Usually it supplements. But 100% solar home, they get all the heating from, so they have to do something a little more. And that is in just a passive home where it's thermal mass of the floor and the wall. That's not enough to keep that heat from going in the middle of the night, leaving, and they need to be cold. So these other ones that have the fans that active because they have fans, they go from one thermal mass like water to rock. And so they keep it in a place where when it does come out, it'll heat the house up and the house will stay warm too. That, can you write about that? Okay, so first you gotta know the difference. The passive solar is the one we were talking about. That had the ratios for how much windows per floor space, remember that? And the 100%, they may not be 100% heated by that, but they use it to help. But the 100% means 100% of the heat is solar. They have to not only let solar in, but they have to have a larger mass, and they have to keep. It can't just light on a mass. The heat heats the mass, and then they fan that heat to another mass, and then that picks up more mass, and they fan it. So they're piggybacking the heat. So those are actually still viable houses, even though people aren't talking about those anymore. I still think they're great. Okay, I think you got the gist of it. Should be easy, huh? Now, let's take a 10-minute break. And then we'll just go for like 8:15.
Oh,
tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you think we need a break?
Yeah.
Yeah, take a little break and then we won't be too long. I just got a couple things on. Anybody who didn't get the window handout last week, there's one up here, there's one up here. I guess, did I send the handouts in the email, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got it.
I got hammered with work the last like 2 weeks. So I haven't had a chance to do the homework yet.
Okay.
Can I just send it to you like on the weekend? This weekend I should have
Okay.
time. Okay, cool. Cause I haven't even had the chance to look at it. Like, yeah.
Well, it kind of asked questions of the unit we went over,
Oh, I see.
and so it's reinforced it. The window ones, I think, are pretty important.
Well, okay.
Yeah, and there's only 30. Now it's 30 because we've struck it.
Okay.
The one, I said they don't sell single pane glass anymore and telling my students practically per se, it's so good.
Oh,
They just don't let you install it in new houses.
yeah. The
You
inspector.
can get it for other
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
I struck that one and then one I didn't finish the 10, I just listed it. We're painted
Oh,
space. Everybody answered it too, it was really
Yeah.
funny. I went,
that's hilarious.
geez, how'd you know whether to put true or false on that?
Yeah.
There's a 50-50 chance of getting it right.
That's right. Good test takers.
Yeah.
That's funny. I can't remember the third one was.
Okay.
It ended up being 30, yeah.
It was the width instead of depth.
Oh, yeah, the last one was about a top mount beam hanger. And
Oh,
I said width instead of depth of the hanger,
oh, I see.
yeah. You can still use it.
Think so, yeah.
Yeah. But if the wood's not exactly the same size, that's fixed, you know, so it'll either be lower or higher. And wood's often varies, so you might be able to put something underneath that hanger to. I can't remember if they allow that. You might be picky about it. I think they allow as long as the nails go keep them up in the top. Forward.
Yeah. Yeah, have you ever read about there's hydro panels? You heard about those?
Hmm.
Where basically you can harvest the moisture out of the air.
Oh, yeah, I have
Yeah.
heard of it. No, that's a really valuable, that's a valuable technology. Just
Yeah.
on a local level, you know,
Right. I mean, it's not good for, like, it's good for your drinking water,
yeah.
but like, it's not enough, like, it doesn't make enough for,
I saw one though, no, they have commercial grade. There was a plant in a desert, I think it was North Africa. I saw the video last couple years ago.
but it's not for showering and stuff, it's like that.
No, it was for bottled water.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
packaging, yeah.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But yeah, the quantity was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like for bottled water, it's enough, but like. You wouldn't have enough roof surface on your
Right.
house to be able to like supply your whole house with
Right.
water or something.
But you know, for people who just want to stay alive with the water, that would be great.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Or let's say you have like your area, like the guys in Palestine, Ohio,
Yeah.
for those guys, it would be good.
Yeah,
So I mean, like,
really.
I wouldn't drink that while there are a million
No,
drinks there,
yeah.
probably.
It kills me that the government guys went down there, you know, and they're all like drinking the water out of the tap, like they didn't.
Oh, yeah,
You know, you can just know when the camera's off and it's like, oh.
yeah, exactly, yeah. It's so ridiculous, yeah.
But they wanted us to build.
Yeah, things like, you know, the thing about money,
And then.
when you have like in capitalism, there's a lot of extra money. They actually know that they're gonna have accidents and people are gonna get hurt, but they know, they figure that into the kind of profit.
Right, yeah,
It's like.
That's so bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like getting scared.
yeah, that's why I feel like money should go to politics.
There.
It's great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
I
mean, well, like
That's like
the railroad companies, they were just like lobbying the Congress and all the politicians like crazy, just so they don't have to put on the new brakes.
chests.
In Europe, those brakes are standard.
Yeah.
And then the government forced the railroad workers to stop striking.
Like that.
Cool.
Well, it's like when they built the really big project like the Hoover Dam, you know, tons of concrete, right? Like billions of. And the actuaries from the insurance said, well, the way you're doing it now, there's gonna be 6.7 people dying from it. And
Yeah.
instead of putting more money and saying, well, what can we do to prevent those 6.7? They just go, oh, okay, well, that's life, you know, a certain amount of people.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing both sides of the government agree on is screwing over blue collar.
Employees.
Yeah.
The only thing that you can agree.
It's so
They
true, like,
do as.
Trump, he likes like raise taxes on like workers, and now Biden's like, oh, I'm the most pro worker guy ever. But it's the same,
Yeah.
he like.
Workers. I like the alternative, but I won't say he's pro work.
Other than the people who work on pools and stuff.
I'll believe myself.
They do
Is that I-
everything that's needed. Drop a tile, make a deck,
Boards in the
do
middle
the
of the
finish, and
track,
if you can't do
and
the finish fast,
it
enough, do
showed, like,
doors.
several videos of. kids
Tries not
like
to sub out
flying
doors too
through,
much, but it takes too many jobs. And you
Like,
get there and then-
train to get to school until
Oh,
like.
no, we hire a
they-
guy.
they push their bikes on.
Yeah,
That's so dumb.
well, you
Oh
know,
my
these,
god.
if you go from here to.
Train Timmy.
Costco,
After Timmy, train them how to make tablets.
the old structures that are right against the freeway.
Car.
So those are storage structures.
I
And I asked
don't
them,
know
well,
what his company.
where's the exit? They got to go parallel to the tracks until they got to.
They were all in the.
No, it's
Actually,
crossing
we
the
can
tracks.
go-
We're gonna have one
Yeah.
road across the track.
Like I've done.
Wow.
Yeah, that is just happening.
Well, I mean, well, but US trains are.
Yeah.
No, that's not a big route.
Yeah.
Yes, because there aren't that many, and they're pretty
I
efficient.
wouldn't do it, but plus I don't like the look of things, but
Yeah, they look.
that's a precedent, you know.
It's like metal ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Like some fake, yeah, stones there.
It's a shame, because I like train travel, it's the best way to travel,
Yeah, it's cool.
and it's not even close.
I
Oh, yeah, it's just, that's why I
can't figure out high speed travels here.
don't care too much about the speed of trains. I mean, it'd be nice to have high speed trains for metro areas, but for like country stuff, I don't want it to take a while.
No, like from the country, you need, because like imagine,
I.
like you wanna get from LA to New York, like right now it takes like a week.
Yeah.
Or something, or 10 days.
No,
It's
I'm
like
gonna go,
72 hours.
I'm gonna go from here to like Renton, like the LA station, all the way to the Jersey Shore, it'll be 3 days.
That's still way.
It's a lot, but if I cared about speed, I would take a plane.
Yeah.
But like imagine all the emissions you could save,
Like
with
you'll,
just having
like
like
you'll say, I need
trains.
7 doors.
Yeah, it would be a good option, but like
Like,
when I'm
you could do
taking
12
the
hours
train, I
moving.
might want to like
Or less.
be able to enjoy.
Oh, yeah, but
But he
yeah,
also has a crew.
so there's the
Actually,
people that are
that's
vacation, I've taken trains too, I like the train. But then there's people that are like business people that are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, for metro areas, it's a good idea, or for going between large cities. Like Los Angeles, what would you, Los Angeles to San Francisco, maybe?
It's like how to-
Los Angeles to San Diego, that'd be a nice one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one from here to, San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
With,
if I were just.
and it goes, yeah, because it goes through a Hollister range, which you never see in that.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Edinburgh, right?
Yeah, yeah, Vancouver, it's a gorgeous.
Air Force, Space Force.
Whoa.
Yeah, right.
I remember Santa Barbara to LA being pretty nice, especially coming into LA from over the mountains.
Yeah.
It was a nice view.
Yeah.
But it's usually a view you can't see from anywhere else, so
Mhm.
it's like this nice.
And like, I was in Reno for God knows how many days for a jazz festival with my band. And going all the way back, I could see the train tracks, when you're going over the path.
Yeah.
And it looks like it would just be the most amazing
Yeah.
view. And the car review is pretty nice too.
I mean, like the other problem in the US is that like cargo has priority over
Yeah.
other people, so like you'd have to build like whole new tracks.
And
Or
cargo
like
is
high speed
so
trains, you know, you can still have your like slow trains, you know.
Are they working on electric trucks, like big,
Yeah, the Tesla truck, Tesla's a semi truck.
yeah,
Well,
cause that would be a good, you know, alternative to also. big trucks.
Yeah, I mean, they're driving in like Nevada already.
I think Amazon.
Wow.
How bad are train emissions in the US? Is it a significant portion of the?
Well, they're super efficient, but still,
If it's cold,
that.
if they're cold, but you know, they're electric, they're mostly electric now.
No, they're just diesel electric, so they have a diesel generator and then they make electricity.
Which is still better.
Well, yeah. it is, but-
I'm just thinking, is it like a priority for emissions? Like, are there?
Well, it is like a lot, because you have a lot like rolling resistance, but you only have like, I don't know, like. An inch on each wheel of the train of like rolling resistance, so it's like, it's super efficient in that way, so it's like. Like, you could probably, my guess is like 3 times more efficient than a truck.
Yeah.
And it's just more efficient because of how many people use it.
And that's,
Right.
yeah, and the storage space you have there too.
I feel like that's the worst part about. Like transportation emissions is that most of California is part of Penny.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
every single person. pretty much-
Well, when you see, when you see doctors,
Backyard water bus.
they're taking time, they're.
Hey, you want like.
They go everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't have a driver's license until I was like 21. Didn't need it.
I still don't have a driver's license. I didn't have a driver's license.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's, it can be difficult.
They should make you have a license for that.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't make me have a license, to be honest. How fast I.
You know, they were bitching about the e-bikes on State Street. But there's no difference between the e-bikes and the regular bikes in terms of riding down State Street. I don't know what they're talking about. I think they're confused. I think they.
They're just talking about the kids like on the Mesa that whip around with the e-bikes.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to see, cause you see like the kids on the, like, no helmet, other kid on the back.
Yeah.
Really unsafe.
Yeah.
They need to regulate helmets better on. Their bikes.
Well, on the other hand, maybe we don't want those guys to have helmets and then we want them to crash and
Well, I
get out of the
don't
gene pool, you know?
It's a science class up in here, man.
like the way they were in philosophy.
But that would eliminate pretty much all teenagers. Right?
Yeah, no, I would have been dead. years
Let's
ago.
face it, yeah.
No, I like the safety campaign that they used where they just had the picture of the kid who died and said, this is what's gonna happen to you.
Hmm.
You didn't see that? It was like between 5 and 10 years ago. It was just like the picture of the kid smiling, drive safe, bike safe. And the kid had like, it's a local kid who had died, because he got hit by a car not wearing a helmet.
Yeah. but
Yeah,
like,
that's a good way
Did he
to.
I
die
got hit by
because
a
he
car
was
here, not wearing
wearing a
a
helmet?
That's
You what?
I mean, you got hit by a
I got
car.
hit by a car here, also on my bike.
Did you have a helmet?
I assume that not wearing a.
A helmet would have.
He basically
but I
like
feel
just
like it's not like
I flew onto his
Like,
like.
you have to wear a
Yeah.
helmet.
Yeah.
This kid died because the only.
Yeah, you can be lucky. If they're going fast, so you can fly.
Yeah.
That's what-
600 miles an hour.
Sure.
Yeah, well, you're fast enough.
You can put your seatbelt
Yeah.
already, it's like, oh, I still, you just not get vaccines, and like, why can't I? It's a dime.
No, I agree that it definitely,
But the fact that it's targeted at.
but it's like guilting you into it.
No, it's also guilting automobile people, it's drive safe is the top, and bike safe is the bottom, it's guilting both of us.
Okay. Yay, equal
Equal opportunity, equal trips.
So
No, I always wear a helmet.
Switzerland must have a lot of bikes, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I went on a trip with some other community college teachers, energy teachers to Scandinavia in Copenhagen. Jeez, it was just all bikes.
Yeah.
That's true. And they had every kind of imaginable shaped bikes, you know, ones for, like if you have to go to work, you have to put your briefcase on or papers.
Yeah.
They had all kinds of children's bikes and I was impressed.
They're even crazier up there to stay like in winter.
Well, they got that bike in there. Yeah.
And it's like taking on the train, you have to go further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great with the whole,
The train is always faster. than the metro.
Yeah.
I bet it helps with the obesity right there too. 'Cause everyone actually-
Yeah.
Everybody.
Oh, for sure. I gained like.
Yeah. I like for my long rides. Also like never asked. Yes. Yeah, it's funny, like the first year I was having this. I said it for a year. And I was using my bike to go to school and then I had to drive to yeah, so
Change.
like 35 minutes.
It's one of the many wonderful things.
I go like it's like a whole hour every day.
Yeah.
Like fine.
Some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The e-bikes are.
Yeah.
You're like.
I didn't have the right set of. But no, so. I didn't. Yeah, they.
There you go. The first one coming.
What, German?
Austria.
Oh.
Austria. I saw.
So. Yeah. Yeah, they always have some. they're so beautiful.
Right.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
How,
Think that guy demonstrated artificial intelligence already, so, yeah.
we're, you know, yeah, yeah. Especially the 1800s.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah.
Okay, so you all got handouts, right? If you didn't, they're on that table right there. But this one here? Oh, now, were you here last week? No, the week before. That was the week before. You can keep that, but I also sent that out in an email. So, but then there's, the new ones are over there in front of me. They look like this thing else. So this one here with the dark CPVCA is just for your information. We're not gonna talk about it, but it's the kind of training that building performance professionals or energy professionals go through in the various things. So if you're vaguely interested in that and you want to know more about it, that has a lot of the it lists a lot of the trainings and types of stuff you would be expected to know. Yeah, so you know, if some of you have are electrical or computer minded, either one. Or HVAC or machine minded, which is a nice alternative. And then this one is about deconstruction and reuse. You know, Carol. Have you guys met Carol?
Most people, yeah, she walks into the Wednesday
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah. She's a character, but she's this is on tape. Carol, I said it. But I love her. She's great. But she's tried for so long and is still trying to get reuse, rooted in this town. This town's not the most reused, recycled, sustainable place in the world, We have some stuff, but when you consider the wealth here, we should be doing a lot of stuff, so, but, building material is huge, waste when they tear down houses. Most of the stuff goes in the landfill, and, like I said before, we only have a couple years left on our landfill, which was just redone 10 years ago, so they don't last, and if this closes up, which it will, in a few years, then we've got to transport, Marburg has to transport all the trash to a further place, which will be in North County, probably around Santa Maria, or even inland, like New Cuyama, or I don't know where they are, but
Past Cuyama.
yeah. That's anybody ever here driven to Cuyama from here? I have, it's a long way.
Yeah.
And they will charge you every mile of that way, so. So, I mean, we can't probably prevent that, but we should start thinking about keeping stuff out of these landfills. So, the building code in California, well, there was a back to this, it didn't come out. And the state, the local, the city of Goleta has an amount of recycling or reusing that you have to do on a remodel project or a new project if it involves tearing down a building. And they don't, I've filled out these forms and remodeling I've done, and they don't check very much. It's like everything. Partly is we don't have enough people to check things, They're just, can you imagine how many, like, that's why, what's the safety, building organization for construction?
OSHA?
Yeah, that's what, thanks, that's why OSHA, the most they do is they'll pick a topic for each year, and then they'll take what people they have and they'll do spot checks, usually spontaneous spot checks to make sure people are accruing. But they can't do all the stuff, that's why they usually focus on one thing, and they can't do all the sites, there just aren't enough people, and that goes for everything that's regulated in this country, so. The people get pissed off at the excess of regulation, but the problem is people themselves don't regulate themselves. If they wanted to live in a sustainable place and a place with a landfill asset, they would take care of it. And because we don't, we rely on regulation, and then the government has to do a lot of regulation, then we get pissed off that they're spending all that money and we have to have all these regulations, so there's no answer the way it is now, except for people to realize they're a part of this whole stream, this waste stream, and they have to play the game too. So anyway, most of these handouts are about, I was sick, so I didn't, in the last few weeks, I forgot something I would usually put in it, is the form I filled out when I did my last project, and what was involved, but you have to, list all the products that are coming out of your demolition and where they're going, and you have to have a certain amount of all that stuff, certain percentage, or they won't okay the project. So, but then you do it, you say you're gonna do it, and then you do it, and nobody really checks, so. And Carol doesn't like that either, but we've been trying to figure out a way to take on contractors, the contracting in town, without getting everybody pissed off at us and, blackballing us from anything we wanna do, so. So she's working on what can be done to help contractors, to make it easy for them to do that. So over the years, she's worked for guys who have companies that deconstruct, instead of demolishing, they come in and they carefully deconstruct the stuff that's valuable and can be reused. And it's not everything, it's a variety of things, and they come in and do that, and they can sell it, if there's a market down in the cities, LA and San Francisco area, Bay Area, there's some good markets, but this town's just small enough and doesn't have the consciousness yet that we don't want to do anything about it, so it just goes to the landfill, and it's way too bad.
Materials only be used for certain things, or can they be used the same way as?
Well, like, for instance, drywall can be recycled, drywall can not reuse, but it can be recycled, you know, that gypsum, they can just crush it and use it. Wood can be used for non-structural things, and if you're gonna reuse it for structural, it's gotta be approved by, the building department. So that's complicated too, but you don't always need to replace structural stuff. You can replace siding. Anybody ever try to take off siding? Siding doesn't come off very easily, unfortunately. Now, if we were smart, if we can invent the heat pump, we could probably figure out a way to make a fastener that would keep siding on, that would make it easy to pull off and not wreck it. But we haven't yet. But we should,
By screwing and siding.
yeah. So there are people, and that's a good question, because on the other end, the design end, manufacturing end is part of the problem too. So architects are trying to figure out ways they can design material that can be more easily reused. And yeah, I mean, there's whole banks of architects that do nothing but work on this kind of stuff, but the house has become a castle to Americans. It's a place where we go and we want it just the way we want it, and we don't want any restrictions on it. But we don't live alone. There's animals and plants and other people in the world that are suffering from some of the choices we make. And so we should be able to compromise somehow. We could do prefab units, and just the way they're arranged could be different, right? So the house could be different that way. And we could have a choice of standard material, and it could be used in different ways. And then the way we interior decorate could be customized. So, we can do stuff like that. Yeah, design for adaptability, disassembly, and reuse. So that's what some of this is about. And then what's this back page? Reuse People of America. So there's actually an organization that's dedicated to figuring out ways to reuse. So reuse is you don't change the material, right? You can reuse it the way it is, or with minor changes. Recycling means you change the form of it, but use the material itself. So reuse takes less energy and has the most savings, but less things can be reused. When I was a carpenter in the 70s of the last century, carpentry was more into reusing. We could reuse we could make all kinds of things out of scrap or discarded material, but now carpenters, it's not that they don't have the skills, they're every bit as skilled now, but they just don't have that attitude that they do that because they're in a hurry. They can buy this stuff, plug it in, get the money they need for their company or the developer. And so they don't bother, but it wastes a lot of resources. And it's kind of fun repurposing stuff. So one of her classes that she gives here is repurposing. And I don't know, I haven't taken it. And I don't know anybody who has, but she was always trying to find carpenters who could do that kind of stuff. And I told her I wouldn't do it. I know how to do it, but my plate's full. I can't volunteer any more stuff. Okay. So come next week for the midterm. Finish the handout, the assignment. Send it to me. I'll look for Brian's there. So you send it again, right? Great, thank you. And then the next week we'll go over the final and chat, and then we'll be over. Start our summer. Okay, you're welcome. Oh, great.
That's done.
Great.
Thank you again. It's been a while.
Okay. Yeah, it's on.
I got a question. So the final will be just like the midterm was, I can show up a little bit early start or?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's open. Thanks, Dan.
Oh, thanks. See you next week, Patrick.
All right. Don't work too hard, you guys. Or work hard, whatever it demands.
Don't worry, I'm gonna stay up all night studying every day, because I know just how difficult this final is gonna be.
Wait, I think I got it on the recording. Okay, good.